Okay. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Abe Bonowitz. I'm with Death Penalty Action. We're here live outside the Idaho Maximum Security Institution. They've got us on a road with lots of trucks going by, as you can see in here. Unfortunately, right across the street is where all the protests are going on, and I'm gonna head over there in a moment. One moment. Jan, go ahead. Is he there? Okay. Okay. All right. I'll cut. If you know him, ask him to come see me. Okay, that's all right. That's all right. We're good. So it's a little bit chaotic here, just because, as you can see, let me just pull this out. And we're going to be joined by folks all around. But you can see people are parking, and we're going to have to walk in, and they've got this huge expanse. So I'm going to go over there in a few minutes, and we're going to gather over there. We'll see what they do. But in any case, right now, we're going to remember the victim. And let me just get that set up. There we are. This is Cantor Zusman joining us by, oh, there's Dave. Hey, Dave, we're on. Good to see you. Dave is at the Capitol. And right now we're going to remember the victim in this case, David Jensen. And just give me a moment here to get this set up. Here we are.
Shalom Aleichem, peace unto you. Cantor Michael Zusman with the thousands of members of L'chaim, Jews Against the Death Penalty and Death Penalty Action from around the world, together with all of civilized humanity, to stand against state-sponsored killing and state-sponsored vengeance. As we always do, on a day when one of our contacts, in this case Thomas Creech, on February 28th, is scheduled for state murder. We never forget the victims and their family members as well. Thomas Creech was accused of the murder of multiple individuals. His death sentence was the result of the murder of one individual in prison. That person's name was David Dale Jensen. Couldn't find a picture online of David Jensen, but this is a picture of his tombstone. He was born May 6th, 1958. Thomas Creech took his life on May 14th, 1981, 2 days before I was born. David Dale Jensen was born in Pocatello, Idaho, the son of Dale Jensen and Margaret Lovelia Kern. He was buried on May 18th of 81. He was preceded in death by his mother, Margaret Jones, and is survived by his father, Dale Jensen, sisters Colette, Nanette, Michelle, grandmother Irene Wood, and many aunts, uncles, and cousins. A memorial prayer for David Dale Jensen from our own Jewish tradition. Whatever tradition you're from, whether it's a prayerful tradition or not, I ask you to devote energy to his memory now. El Malei Rachamim Shochein B'Amedomim Hametzei Menucha Nechon תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים. את נשמת David Jensen, Ben Margaret ודל, שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר Zichrono livracha, may the beloved memory of David Dale Jensen be an everlasting blessing. May his neshama, his spirit, be a loving guide to all his loved ones and all who knew him. May all be comforted who mourn him among all the mourners of the world. And may there be no more blood shed in his name. May the killings end. Amen.
All righty. Well, welcome everybody. We are here in outside of Boise, Idaho. There's a number of folks that have gathered. As you can see, they've got this huge expanse here at the outside the prison with lots and lots of space, and yet they're making people park on the road, the trucks going by and all that. And they won't let anybody bring any bags and such in there, but people are gathering. We've got lots of folks that are coming in. Welcome everybody. I'm Abe. Glad to see you here. And there's lots of people watching on the Zoom live. So there's Rob Dunham here. But let's take a quick check-in with Dave Powell, who's at the Capitol. Dave, welcome. Anybody there with you? Got on mute. Dave, can you unmute?
I am unmuted. No one has arrived yet, but we still
Unmute.
have.
There you go. Dave, if you can turn your camera sideways and then let us know what's happening out there.
Well, right now we're in front of the Capitol, in front of the Liberty Bell. I'm waiting for other people to arrive.
Okay, terrific. Thanks for being there at the Capitol. And then I see that Rob Dunham is here with the Death Penalty Policy Project. Switch this around. Oop. Sorry, we are managing too much all by ourselves. So there we are. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Abe. The Supreme Court has denied all three stay applications just a couple of minutes ago. This is a tough case, obviously, because of the fact that Mr. Creech is implicated in so many murders, but it's also a case where there are extraordinary things that the United States Supreme Court has just decided to ignore. It's again a case of the court wanting to expedite executions, as opposed to ensuring that if you're going to have a death penalty, it's applied in a manner that comports with the law. The three issues that were before the court Or one dealing with the fact that Mr. Creech was sentenced to death in procedures that are now clearly unconstitutional. Idaho, at the time of his death sentence, had judge-only sentencing, which meant that there was no jury to determine whether aggravating circumstances outweighed mitigating circumstances and to find the facts that are essential in making a determination of whether a defendant should live or die. This was well before the United States Supreme Court decided in Ring versus Arizona that there is a right to a jury trial on facts necessary to impose the death penalty. And the remarkable thing in this case is that trial counsel preserved the issue back in 1982, and so he was 20 years ahead of the United States Supreme Court. But the court has never retroactively applied that rule. And so despite the fact that the execution process, the sentencing process is clearly unconstitutional and could not be sustained today, the court denied review of that particular issue. The second issue that was before the court dealt with the execution process itself. And that was a challenge to the chemicals that were being used that the state intends to use to carry out this execution. The only information that Idaho released was that it was going to be carrying out the execution by pentobarbital, and the defense was able to determine that the pentobarbital was not compounded, that it actually came from a pharmaceutical company, and their belief was it was from a pharmaceutical company manufacturer that is no longer in business. Idaho claimed that it had tested the drugs for potency, but released no information about that. And so Mr. Creech raised the issue about secrecy. How can we have any meaningful assessment of the constitutionality of the drugs themselves, the use of the drugs themselves, whether they'll be cruel and unusual, if Idaho has hidden all of the information? The United States Supreme Court denied review on that issue as well. The third issue is another one that's disturbing. And that goes to the question of the constitutionality of the clemency process in this case. Mr. Creech had a clemency hearing, and the board divided 3-3 on whether to recommend commutation. Because it was a tie vote, it was a negative recommendation, which meant that the governor had no authority to consider even granting clemency. But the fact that there was a 3-3 vote is significant because the prosecution manufactured some evidence and presented other false evidence and essentially lied in the clemency proceedings. They claimed that there was now new evidence that Mr. Creech was implicated as the murderer in another case in California. It turns out that that was 50-year-old evidence that had previously been found to be unreliable. The state also, at the clemency hearing, produced a photograph of what they purported to be the murder weapon, which was a sock that had Mr. Creech's name on it with batteries inside. Well, that would have been very interesting to have been presented at the time of trial if it were true, because it would have been powerful evidence. It wasn't. And in fact, the photograph they showed was not the murder weapon, was not Mr. Creech's sock. And prosecutors backed away from defending that in some of the Ninth Circuit proceedings. And one of the interesting elements here is that the Attorney General's office did not enter an appearance on this issue in the U.S. Supreme Court. The county prosecutors from Ada County were the ones who filed their brief in opposition to the request for a stay of execution so that the court could determine whether there's a constitutional violation when one party lies in order to obtain a denial of clemency. So those were the issues in the case. They've all been denied. The Supreme Court didn't want to hear them, and now the execution is scheduled to go forward.
Thank you, Rob.
Hey, Rob, I had a question real quick.
Mhm.
Obviously, we are seeing these appeals consistently be shot down by the Supreme Court. And my dear friend, and who I'm so excited getting action, Mr. Richard Glossop in Oklahoma, um, again, somebody I love very much. What makes that case different than all these other cases? What is why is he getting action and nobody else is?
Well, first you have to understand that the Supreme Court conferenced
What?
his petition 19 times before they reached a decision that they were going to hear it. And his case has the support of the Attorney General of Oklahoma. So you have both the prosecutor and the defense saying that the death sentence in this case cannot stand, that there was a constitutional violation, and that Mr. Glossop is entitled to a new trial. And while that is a very hopeful development for Rich Glossop, there are also warning signs that went along with it, because at the time that the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, they added a question for the parties to brief. And the question for the parties to brief was whether there were procedural barriers that prevented the court from hearing the case at all.
Mm.
So this is a court that has been denying claims in cases of innocence, denying claims in cases of people who are ineligible for the death penalty for a variety of reasons, including mental illness, severe mental illness, and intellectual disability. But I think that Richard's case has overwhelming documented evidence that has been presented to a court already that he is innocent. And at a minimum, that prosecutors lied and engaged in misconduct and destroyed evidence that could have exonerated him. So he has more evidence that has already been presented to a court. In this case, in Mr. Creech's case, the evidence that was sprung on him at the clemency hearing had never been presented anywhere before. In the case of Ivan Cantu, who is scheduled for execution later today, there is a lot of evidence of innocence, but it has not been yet presented to a court. And we all know Anthony Sanchez, right? There was a lot of evidence there that had not previously been presented to a court. So I think the fact that that Richard was able to get the evidence before a court may be something that that distinguishes his case from the others. But it's also one of the most powerful cases of innocence that we've seen in the United States in a death penalty case in years. Now, that didn't seem to matter with Julius Jones, who, while he got his sentence commuted, is almost certainly innocent but sentenced to life without parole. But it is something that looks good for Mr. Glossop in terms of obtaining his freedom.
Thank you, Rob. Rob, I'm going to ask a follow-up now that we're waiting. So, in the future, since the bar has been, put so high, I mean, it's almost as activists, it feels like our only option is to go to the public. Like it feels like there's nowhere else to go except to try to convince the public that this is wrong and these cases need to be looked at. I mean, I know with Anthony's case, I mean, we desperately, went to avenue after avenue after avenue. And then we were left appealing to the public. But the problem is that you can't take these last minute appeals to the public. I mean, you can, but it's not like they're going to be able to rush to the chamber and stop the execution or anything like that. I mean, it's incredibly disheartening, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. And in one sense, you could say the Supreme Court has abdicated its responsibility to enforce the Constitution in death penalty cases. But I think that's being favorable to the court. I think that this is an activist court, and it is an outcome-oriented court, and it wants executions to happen. The severity of the constitutional violations that it's been ignoring are unbelievable. And a court that was worthy of that name most likely would have granted relief in at least some of those cases. So I think we're looking at a court that has pretty much given up the ghost when it comes to being a defender of the Constitution. And it has politicized the death penalty as well as a variety of other issues. And it is a court that is on parallel, as bad as, if not worse, than the pre-Civil War courts and the court during the Depression. The fact of the matter is, as a practical matter, if one is interested in abolition, this court is not where you're going to find it. And if you're not going to find enforcement of the Constitution, you're not going to find the court taking any additional measures beyond enforcing the Constitution in individual cases and declaring the death penalty unconstitutional. That means the locus, the location of change has to be legislative or at the ballot box. It means that there's a responsibility for abolitionists at the state level to be paying a lot of attention to who candidates are for state Supreme Courts, to try to get the state courts to enforce state constitutional prohibitions against cruel, unusual punishment or unfair practices. And at the county level, electing prosecutors who are going to seek justice as opposed to seeking executions at any cost. So I think the place of activism is necessarily going to change as a result of the removal of the U.S. Supreme Court from the scene.
Thank you, Rob.
Hey, hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Hey, Suzanne, can you turn on your unmute? Suzanne, unmute.
And Abe,
Yes.
before you do that, I am monitoring some things on Mr. Cantu's case, so I'm going to have to hop off. But I just wanted to give everybody an update on what was happening here.
Thank you so much. Hop back when you can.
Thank you, Rob. As
See you
always,
this evening, unfortunately.
the law whisperer.
And I'll probably, when it's time for some comment, I'll need somebody to hold this up because the wind is blowing. I see you dressed warm.
Okay, Suzanne, are you on music? I think somebody's got.
I think there's some interference, Abe.
Not sure where that's coming from. All right. All right. Well, there is a. It's hard to hear what's happening there. We'll check in on the other side. Am I echoing here?
Yeah, it's echoing really bad.
Jeff, handle things, please. Be right back.
All right, y'all. I'll jump in real quick. And Charles, I was going to get you to say a few words. And one of the things that I've been thinking about in a lot of these cases is how the families get out here and they participate and they get involved. And I know that you have forever, it seems like, been involved in your brother's case and worked so hard. And I guess I feel like with the families, there's this spirit of never giving up. Because you love somebody, you can never give up. And so for all of us, as Rob was talking, obviously it's incredibly disheartening to hear that, you can't even get any action from the Supreme Court, or you can't seem to. Tell us about never giving up. You're muted.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, as far as the family goes, Your last name is out there. Your blood is out there. This is the kids that you grew up with. You have a responsibility and obligation as family members to love one another. You know, so when you get older and something happens to the person that's missing, you go through your rituals and, you know, you bury them and then you grieve and you move on. But older family members, they've been dead for so many years, yet they're not. Just by the letters that continue to come in, phone calls that come in. I mean, this death penalty, that particular person, killing off the whole family. And it affects not only the parents, but you're going into the children and the grandchildren. It's a serious infection, and it's very to get out of this.
Hey, Charles,
And-
can you lean in a little bit? It's a little hard to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
And, you know, with the kids growing up and, you know, they're going to school and they're learning about our justice system, they come back and ask that question that I've been asking. How come Uncle Kevin's in the trial? How come this and how come that? And when I tell them it's not a matter of guilt or innocence, it's the fact that they've raised the bar so high that this innocence claim does not reach that bar. At least that's what they've told us.
Charles LaCroix and everybody else. Charles LaCroix and everybody else.
I couldn't hear you.
I think that was coming from somebody else. Abe, did you need something?
Charles froze up for a moment. Keep going.
Yeah, I was, you know, the adults, we've adjusted to whatever tragic situation we've gone through, but, you know, there's such a point of depression in your family because you've got to raise the children off of that bull crap. And they're always asking what's wrong. They always know somebody's missing. So, you know, to raise your family off the death penalty, for family, we've lost friends, we've lost family members. I mean, it's one thing. In fact, my brother just came off of a 2-week hunger strike. I think he lost me 25. You're starving myself to death. The justice system still doesn't care. He said, all I want to do is I just want to hear my case. It's never heard. You know, it's all the things that go around about trying to get to the Supreme Court, you know, trying to get to those people. You have to understand those people in a million years you never have anybody. So that's basically what you're getting for. So where will the Supreme Court or any of these courts, all the way down to the prosecutors, seek justice? Not to come in here and dominate these families and annihilate these families because we're poor.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles. So let me just share that we're here outside of the prison in Idaho.
Abe, the echo is still really bad.
Over in the space, so we've got some folks on one side of the barbed wire, and there's Suzanne with the musicians, and people are being prayerful. We've also got some folks over at the Capitol with Dave Powell and the bell, where we'll be hearing the tolling of the bell at that time. And also a number of churches across the state are going to be tolling their bells.
Abe,
Hey, that's going to be happening as well.
Abe,
and
the echo is horrible. It's really hard to hear you.
Sorry, go ahead.
The echo is really bad. It's really hard to hear you.
I think that somebody else close to Abe has their
well, you know what? This car ain't mine. So unplugged in here. So how's that?
Are you standing close to Suzanne?
No, I'm nowhere near her.
Okay, it sounds better now that you're moving.
Yeah, the car has a mind of its own. It keeps turning on the radio, and it's attached to my phone, and it's just crazy. So
okay. It sounds much better.
Good. Thank you for letting me know. So basically, Suzanne's over there across the road from me. You can just add my camera. And we're waiting. We may be joined by some other folks from Idaho in particular. Leo Morales, who's the executive director of the ACLU of Idaho. We wanted to make sure that he's got some thoughts to share too, if he's able to make it in. But we're on the ground here. We're grateful for everybody that is watching, and we're just appalled by the situation that's going on. I want to say also that I've been very grateful to be close communication with the attorneys in this case, who really are very grateful for everybody that's been taking action. So what our plan is going to be is at about 1:45, we'll gather up and circle up over there and be prayerful and move to that program that's here at the prison for a little while. At 10 o'clock, we'll hear the tolling of the bells from the Capitol building, and then we'll continue with the dialogue. So we've got about 15 minutes to make sure we get some comments here. Jeff, if you can watch for Leo Morales to come on from the ACLU, and I'll keep my microphone off and let you all carry it forward. Cool.
Thank you, Abe. Let's go ahead and go to Magdaleno. If you don't mind, we've got this place in the movement right now with Thomas Creech. There were issues that could have been acted upon. Good lawyers, good issues. We're seeing it with Ivan Cantu. We saw it with Anthony Sanchez. And I know that you faced difficult moments in terms of your activism before. How do we move on? How do we push forward?
Well, I think that we're doing a lot of what we can, and that's what we're showing up the inconsistencies of justice and the Constitution, that people really don't care about a fair trial. That's the one thing that we have to know, and we have to fight hard. And the process of death penalty cases stands against us, and then the Supreme Court that will not listen. So I think that Rob was reaching a point that many of us have reached before, is that if we really want to get to the folks and have them change their minds, is we got to get involved in voting. We got to get involved and make a difference. A lot of these state legislatures, they win by maybe 1,000, 2,000 votes. All you have to do is dump a couple of them or scare them, and then they'll start listening to you. But as long as we're not voting and we don't have any strength, and we go there with them with our moral positions, they don't want to listen to that. And I found out because 1972, I had to go up against the Democratic Party, and I defeated one of their candidates to show them that if they're going to have a racist, then we may as well have a Republican racist. We don't need a Democratic racist in Democratic clothing. And you know what? They told me I was no longer part of the party, and I said I never joined. But a year and a half later, they came back and said, "Who do you want as a candidate?" And because they knew we did the registration, we had the votes, we had the power, and we weren't afraid to use it. And I think sometimes we have to wake up our friends, and we have to look for creative ways to get people to vote with us. In Colorado, when I was working for the farm workers, I got a racist friend of mine who was a state legislator not to show up to a hearing, so that the bad bill that the farmers had could not go through. And the way I did it, I told him, I've been listening to your racist jokes for a year. You got to do me a favor. He said, "I can't do you a favor." But you know what happened? He didn't show up for the meeting. So I said, "Bob, what happened to you?" He said, "Well, funny thing, I went out for a ride and I had a flat tire and couldn't make it back in time." So I think that we have to think of creative ways of doing things and reaching people, because we're on the right side of history. And we all know, because we went through the civil rights, we went through MLK, we've gone through immigrant rights, LGBTQ, women's rights. It's not easy, but we have to become as organized as the women are about abortion and bring it to, this new Alabama law is driving even Republicans crazy because they didn't know that their folks were extreme as they were, and it's coming back to bite them. So we have to be smart. We have to organize. And I think there's nothing wrong with us standing up and giving our moral and political positions, even though we lose. Because how many years did we wait to get Mandela out? How many years did we wait to get rid of Jim Crow laws? How many days and weeks and months did we wait to get some rights for women? Well, we're not giving up those fights. And I think we just have to keep being creative because we don't know who we're going to change, I didn't come into this movement as an abolitionist. I came into it as a person who wanted to protect just Chicano rights. And I found out that if I'm going to protect the rights of Mexican Americans like Brother Cantu in Texas, I have to protect everybody's rights. And when we go out, we protect LGBTQ rights, women's rights, immigrant rights. Eventually, they're going to come and protect our rights because we're in this together. This is a fight right now, historically, where everybody who cares about the poor, who cares about the discriminated, the forgotten, we're all on the same side. And we got to tell them we're fighting the same monster. And the other thing is, I think it's so crazy that we can go out and have these sacrifices of human lives, and they don't want to hear our arguments. But when there's a shooter who goes to a school with an AR-15 and kills, or to a community center or a religious center, kills a bunch of people, and we say, well, we ought to do something about it, and they tell us this is not the time to talk about it. We need to calm down, but they never come back and talk about it. How can you execute people in America and still allow AR-15s to go around doing mass shootings in this country? We have to show the contradictions. And I think because we have people like you, Reverend Hood and others, that we're on the moral, the right side. History will look at us well, but we need to keep working because if we could change Abe Bonowitz's mind and my mind to become full-time abolitionists, anything is possible. And that's the way we bring, and we're further ahead in this movement than we were 30 years ago. So I'm frustrated, I'm upset, but I have faith in what we're doing.
Thank you, Magdaleno. I wanted to, I see Abe holding up Jews Against the Death Penalty. Thankful for all the faith traditions that are present here this morning. I wanted to quickly, over my shoulder back here, I wanted to show you all this. That is a picture of me at my first death penalty protest in 2009. And that was when Troy Davis was executed. I was standing across the street along with other folks who have been involved in the movement. And as I look back at that moment, I realized that that was a moment in which the Spirit guided me to a place I didn't expect to be, guided me to a moment I didn't expect to be. We all have our passive entrance into this movement. But I do know that if we open our hearts, if we allow our spirits to be led in the direction of advocating for justice, there's all sorts of places that we could go. I never would have imagined I'd be doing what I do now. But it's, the activism around the Troy Davis case that pushed me in that direction. And I think it's important that there are probably people on this vigil today who this might be their first vigil. This might be their entryway. And sometimes it gets disheartening and sometimes it gets difficult because we're not getting the traction that as quickly as we want to get. But again, if we keep showing up, there will be others who keep showing up, and we'll multiply and multiply and multiply until this thing is done, till abolition is accomplished. I wanted to jump over to Dave. Can you hear me at the Capitol? You're still muted, but I wanted to ask you just about y'all's relationship with Thomas Creech and what he was like. All right, we'll wait just a second for Dave to get unmuted. Could we jump over to Dave? Just let me know when you're ready to go. I was going to jump over quickly to.
Well, let's get Shane in here, and
All right.
waiting to see about if Leo is here. I don't see him yet, but we're getting ready to get going over on the other side in a few minutes.
Let's see. Hold on.
Welcome, Shane Claiborne. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, terrible day to have to be together, but the only thing worse than an execution is an execution without a protest. So we show up together to raise our voices. I'm in Philadelphia today, the city of love, and we're one of those states that still has the death penalty, but we haven't used it in over 10 years. I think it's 15 years now, and Idaho is one of those states that doesn't have to kill someone. We know that we can do justice without killing another person. And the death penalty is not justice. It doesn't heal the wounds of violence. It just creates new wounds. It mirrors the evil that we're trying to heal the world of. And so we are working hard on the ground in Pennsylvania to abolish the death penalty. We have a governor who came out against the death penalty for the first time recently, and I got to be there for that. Rob Dunham was there. We had a powerful presence there to support our Jewish governor who held out the death penalty because of the Tree of Life massacre that targeted the Jewish community. But it was actually the victims in Pittsburgh that said, we don't need the death penalty. We can do justice and honor the victims without killing another person. And so as we look at Idaho, we know that Idaho would be even more beautiful without the death penalty. To pioneer ways of saying that murder is wrong without actually committing murder ourselves. I don't even want to eat Idaho potatoes right now, Brother Jeff. We want to say we gotta put Idaho in the spotlight and say this is going backwards, not forwards. We're one of the few countries of the world that is still killing people to try to show that killing people is wrong. And as a Christian, we're a broad coalition at Death Penalty Action, people of all faiths and people of no faith in particular, but that are motivated by their conscience. But I want to say, as a Christian, that one of the things that is haunting in all of this is that the death penalty would not stand a chance in America without the support of Christians. And we need Christians on all levels to be that conscience that Martin Luther King spoke of when he said, we are to be the conscience of the state, to stand up to a state that kills and say, you cannot kill in our name. And if Christians on the ground in each state would raise our voices all the way to the Supreme Court, if Christian governors, Christian legislators would commit ourselves to stand against death, to be pro-life on the death penalty would be ended overnight. So let's stand up, y'all. Continue to join Death Penalty Action. And here's the important thing too. Continue to support the state coalitions that are working to forge relationships, working with lawyers, working to abolish the death penalty. We're doing that in Pennsylvania. We need it in Idaho. We got a powerful coalition in Texas that's doing that. Every state has a movement of resistance that is saying, no, we need alternatives to the death penalty. So thanks for showing up for this prayerful protest that unfortunately we got to show up twice today to say no to death. But what a good thing it is to know that we are not alone right now, that there are folks all over the world and in every state in the U.S. that are saying we will not support the death penalty any longer. So thanks for showing up.
Thank you, Shane. As always, brother. I wanted to read a comment really quick, and then I wanted to try to jump over to Dave Powell. Donna Bowe said that she just wants to share that a person attending all 3 meetings at our Methodist church in Pocatello told me this morning that his autistic brother had been on death row for 16 years, and that it was during that time that Tom Creech reached out to him, mentored him, and was someone who made him feel okay there. His brother was later exonerated, but he and his family still remember Tom as someone who was so nice to his brother. Man, what a beautiful, beautiful comment. And it just speaks to the humanity of all of us, no matter what we've done, the humanity of all of us. Dave, could you unmute over there?
There. Okay. Can
All
you hear
right.
me?
Well, yeah, we just wanted to check in, see what's going on over there, and
I think we can both. I have my foot on this, and we'll both. I'm
And could
joined here by
could-
Cassandra at the moment. We are in front of the state capitol.
could y'all introduce yourselves?
Sure. This is Cassandra. Hey, Cassandra, what's your last name? Marshall. My name is Dave Powell. Okay. We're in front of the state capitol, as we were yesterday. And as I sit in front of this House of Legislature, I think several things about our state. And so I'm going to address this to my fellow Idahoans. There are 2 points that come up to mind about this execution or any execution in this state. I'm a fiscal conservative, and it just doesn't make financial sense to spend my tax dollars, our tax dollars, on people on death row, because it costs the state about $90,000 per person per year, and that's money that could be given over to help victims of murder, and that would be a much wiser use of our tax dollars as a conservative. Secondly, Idaho is known for its friendliness. This is an awesomely friendly state, from the very friendly correctional officers out there at Max. My wife is part of prison ministry out there, to the security personnel here, and everybody we work with every place we go. An execution is a stain on our hospitality, on our friendliness as a state. Finally, when we think about our children, and we want our children to resolve their conflicts, resolve their anger, resolve their concerns in a peaceful, constructive, positive manner, we don't want to teach them that violence works. And an execution teaches people that violence works. It perpetuates violence. The people who are in prison for life, the people on death row, they were not deterred by these threats. We want to remove them from society so that they do not harm us, keep them in prison for life, okay, without parole, and that will serve the same purpose as an execution will do it, only without the stain on the good nature and friendliness and values of this marvelous state. And that's why we're out in front, Cassandra and I, just doing our little bit to try to encourage the legislators and the governor behind us, who, by the way, can still call the execution, do a temporary stay, and let the full parole board reconsider the sentence for Mr. Creech and changing it to life imprisonment without parole. So on behalf of Idahoans, I encourage us to take the wise, conservative approach and ask that the death penalty be abolished and replaced with lifetime incarceration.
Dave, thank you very much. Would Cassandra like to say anything? Not at this time. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm on my phone now. I'm gonna jump back across the street here in a minute. We'll see what's going on over there. Let me just change the view.
All right. Janet, would you mind jumping in?
Hi, Jeff. Yes.
It's good to see you, Janet. Coming to us live from across the pond. Thank you so much.
Yeah, actually, it's just started going a bit dark here. Let me put a light on that I can see.
It's what time is it? 5 p.m. 4 p.m.
It's 5 p.m. It's 5 p.m. here in the UK.
All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello, everybody. My name is Janet Walsh. I'm a Christian believer, and I live near Manchester in the United Kingdom. The last executions in the UK were carried out in 1964. That's almost 60 years ago. And I'm standing here with you all as you campaign to abolish the death penalty in the USA and to try to save the lives of those condemned to death, especially today for Thomas Creech. This is my prayer. Mighty God, strong deliverer, the rock in whom we trust, we praise you for the many ways you've been with us in the past. Today, my heart is filled with sadness as the life of Thomas Creech is so needlessly about to be taken. Thank you that Thomas has turned his life around since he committed such a terrible crime. Thank you, O God, that he's come to know you, Jesus, as his Lord and Saviour. And although his life on earth will soon be so cruelly taken, we are comforted in the hope that he will be spending eternity with you. May Thomas know your peace and be set free from fear as he spends his final few moments here on earth. I want to pray for all those who will be impacted by this cruel execution, especially those who have known the changed Tommy during his 43 years in prison. Put your comforting arms around them, as well as all his family and friends. And for those who are desiring of vengeance, I remind them of the words from Paul's letter to the Romans, which says, "Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord." And for the victim's family and friends, I pray you will seek forgiveness for wanting revenge. And I pray you will forgive Thomas for what he did all those years ago and be set free. May those still impacted by his crimes be healed. And Governor Brad Little, may your dreams be haunted by the knowledge that you could have stopped the execution of Thomas Creech, but didn't. And may you allow your heart to be so filled with compassion that never again will an execution be carried out under your watch. I speak a special blessing on everyone who has been trying so hard to stop this execution of Thomas Creech. And I offer all these prayers up to you, O God, in the mighty and precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you so much, Janet. I wanted to, again, thank you, Janet. I appreciate you being so dedicated to being here all the time. I wanted to jump now to Leo Morales of the ACLU of Idaho. Appreciate so much the ACLU protecting our civil liberties out there, and also being so involved in the works of abolition all over the country. So, Leo, if you could give us a few words.
Thank you very much. Well, with the mixed emotions, I stand in front of a place of worship, a place of faith on this day as the state of Idaho moves forward with an execution. This is a very, as I said yesterday in my comments, a very barbaric system. And folks from across the country, from across the state have sent a strong message to the governor, strong message to Idahoans that this should not be moving forward in our names. Again, today I stand here in place of faith, really grounding myself and many others as we continue to fight for justice. We are doing everything we can, and now I think we will keep the names and the families' names of those that have suffered as we continue to stand in solidarity for justice and for dignity and for human life. We will continue to fight across the state and across the country to finally remove the death penalty from this country, from this state, and from the usage of any form. And so today, again, I stand with mixed emotions. and grounded with everyone in solidarity as we stand witness to what the state is doing under our name. So that is all I have for today. Again, as I stand here in front of a place of worship, a place of faith, and stand in solidarity with everyone else as we fight for justice. Thank you, and back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leo. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Leo. Jeff, I'm going to go across the street. And Dave, if you're about ready with the bells, that'd be great.
Hey, Abe, would you like for Mike's on here? Would you like for Mike to jump in real quick, and then we'll do the bell?
We're getting ready to toll the bells. It's right on the hour in about 4 minutes. And let's go to the program here, and we'll do Mike's thing when once we close here.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so keep me spotlighted and the Capitol spotlighted. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right.
I'll add a few more comments after this will last a few minutes once the bells begin around. Follows those I will go first. You. I'll hold close. You.
Reverend Andrews, if you could, whoever's speaking, speak straight into the microphone. We're on live with everybody else.
Gracious God, we thank you for prayers for those who are here and time out to state their beliefs and state the stance. We pray for those who, as previously said, who are administering the execution. We pray for his guards who became friends and know him on a different.
I would say for at least 20 years
there that
I'll be here for 20
years. Of the victims, just know that that's wrong, but we know that love, grace, and light is what we're trying to achieve. We just ask that as light goes forward, we will find new ways to show punishment. We will find new ways to get past needing to do executions. We will show new ways that we can be in a community together to look for restorative justice. And we lift this up to you in so many ways.
Thank you all for being here. I'm on a live Zoom with people from around the world and around the country. And in a moment, we're going to hear the bells tolling from the Capitol and from Boise. So Dave is going to first listen. Dave Powell is there with a few other people, Leo Morales and others. And they're going to be listening for the bells tolling from the church of the Cathedral of the Rockies and St. Andrews. And I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the whole list of numerous churches that have put out the call for tolling their bells at 10 a.m. at the time of the scheduled execution. So we'll be listening to that. But meanwhile, I again want to express my gratitude for everybody being here. And do we have a time check?
It's right at 11 o'clock, Abe.
And right, that's 11 o'clock Central Time and 10 a.m. here in Montana.
Right.
Dave, I put the house there. Can we spotlight Dave and his
Hey Dave, can you hear us? We can go ahead and start tolling the bell.
The bells have begun. We can hear them in the background.
Beautiful thing. If you would begin to toll the bell there at the Capitol, move your camera a bit closer to it. Dave, if you could move your camera closer to it, there you go. getting it going. So it appears that the sound is not great from that, but we did hear one chime, and we know that the bells are tolling from all across Idaho. And now, if we are ready for an appropriate song to carry us into this moment, please. Amazing grace, how sweet the saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now was blind, but now I see. Grace that my heart, grace my feet, grace and morning angels God's grace has brought me safe, and grace will lead my hope secure. He will worship
Okay, I have a sick kid at home.
Oh my.
So we'll,
I understand.
good.
Sure. And the our first grab stuff.
Oh, two girls.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Yeah, exactly. It's been fun. They ask questions. Yeah. Yeah.
Was mine by grace. I saw that comment that the sound was pretty awful. Can you hear me okay?
It's still got a bad echo.
Too much going on here. How's that?
Yes, I think that's a lot better.
Okay. The sound was pretty bad over there, right?
Yeah, and I think Suzanne is trying to get us some sound, but you can't hear her either.
All right. What I'll do is share Cantor Zusman's. I see Cantor Zusman here. We'll share the 23rd Psalm and let you all carry it from here. And we'll try to check back in a little while.
Shalom Aleichem, peace unto you. Cantor Michael Zusman with the thousands of members of L'chaim, Jews Against the Death Penalty and Death Penalty Action. February 28th, as our contact Thomas Creech is being put to death horrifically. Our thoughts turn to him now. From whatever tradition you may be from, whether it's a spiritual tradition, a secular one, we ask you to turn your energy to him now. So we place him in the valley of the shadow of death. This is Psalm 23, which references that valley in its original Hebrew. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot deshe yad b'yitzeini, al mei menuchot yenachaleni. Nafshi eshovev yanacheni lemagale tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech begel tzalmavet Lo irara, ki ata imadi, shivtecha umishantecha. Shivtecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan, Taroch lefanai shulchan, neged tzorerai di shanta, Vashemen Roshi, Nishanta Vashemen Roshi, Kosi Revaya, Achtov Vachesen. Yirdefuni kol yemei chayai V'shavti beveit Adonai V'shavti beveit Adonai Leorech Yami.
Thank you, Brother Mike. The 23rd Psalm. God is my shepherd. I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul. God leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for God is with me. The rod and the staff of God, they comfort me. God prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. It is God who anoints my head with oil. Surely my cup runs over. Goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in God's house forever and ever. Amen. If we could take a couple of seconds of silence, and then I wanted to jump in and say a few words.
Jeff, I'm going to leave you to do the spotlighting and all that for the time being. I'll be back.
No problem. In the stillness and in the quiet of this moment, I can't help but think about what Tom is going through. In the last 14 months, I have been with 5 different men who have been executed. I have a little bit of awareness of what those final moments are like. And of course, everybody responds differently. There's all sorts of ways that people experience fear and anxiety. But something that unites all of those moments is that they are very human moments. Sometimes there are tears. Sometimes there's nervousness. Sometimes there's even peace. but they are all very human responses. In those moments, you go and you see all these security guards standing really tough and, you know, not showing a lot of emotion. And then you see state officials trying to do the same thing. But even beyond that veneer, I know that there are human beings behind those types of responses. No matter how tough you look, I know that there are human beings behind those expressions. When I think about the glass, where the state officials sit, where the witnesses sit, when I think about the control room, those are human beings behind that glass. So often when we meet atrocity and tragedy, we like to dehumanize each other. We like to say that one side is a monster or the other side is a monster. Society loves to call these guys monsters. Then if they disagree with the other side, they say that those are monsters. Well, all that I've seen in these circumstances are not monsters. They're all human beings. They all breathe the same air that we breathe. They all feel and hurt and bleed as we do. It's important to remember that this is not a Republican problem. This is not a Democrat problem. This is not a court problem. This is not a legislature problem, governor problem. This is a human problem. And as human beings, we are gathered here to try to do something about it. But let us remember that the reason that this moment is so evil is because Tom is just like us. The executioners are just like us. The politicians, the courts that allowed this, they're just like us. And it is my prayer that it begins with us, that we see the humanity in each other, and that is the first step towards helping others see the humanity in everyone else. Because it's only when we begin to see the humanity in each other that we can stop this. So as you go about your day, the rest of the day, hopefully many of y'all will join us for the other vigil that hopefully won't happen, but tonight. I want you to remember that the way that you look at people as you walk down the street, that's a work of abolition. As you encounter the person who cuts you off in traffic, that's a work of abolition. As you engage these geopolitical moments that are so horrifying, and you try to see humanity in such spaces, that's a work of abolition. So let us not forget that the message of Thomas Creech doesn't just extend to this moment. It extends to how we engage every single day. The abolitionist is the person who demands humanity from themselves so that they might find the humanity in the other. May we be united, not just in our desire to end the death penalty, but in our desire to be human to each other. Amen. Well, I wanted to, Charles, did you have something? Okay, let's jump over to Charles real quick. Go ahead, Charles.
I wanted to piggyback on something that you were saying. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to piggyback on something that you were saying about people being human and you're being human. My brother, you know, I tell him, first thing he asks me is each execution, tell me something good about that person. Tell me something that person did while they were incarcerated. And then when I tell him, he says, that's God showing you he touched that person. That's God showing you he touched that person changed. He's in there now providing comfort and care for other guys that are facing death. And then he and I pray, and it's a strange thing calling into the prison, and I'm talking to my brother who faced death. And now we're praying. But the thing he told me to always look for the other guy, he says, Charles, look what good guy been in there 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Look what good he did in developing as a man while incarcerated, not being selfish, not thinking about himself, regardless of what he's facing. He said, that man God touched. And we're all seeing that. And the thing of it is that we can't get over our thirst with death to see the change in these men. And so what we want to do is, well, we're going to carry out the law when we've already shown that this person's life should be spared. As my brother's life was spared, he says, God touched me, Chuck. And he's showing you, my brother's, he's a pastor. You look at these guys that are extending their hands out, even in the face of death. These aren't killers. They may have killed. Some have not. But these are not killers. To me, it seems like most of our killers don't get the death penalty. That's the thing that gets me. But I wanted to back that up, what you were talking about, being human first and foremost above anything. And that's something that my brother, who was on death row for 16 years, he's now doing life without parole. He's been on there for 16 years. He says, but you look at each and every one of those men because they're revealing their souls. He says, these are good. God touched them. These are good men.
Thank you, Charles, so much. Charles, you always have a wise word, brother. Thank you so much. I wanted to jump over here to Mike Zusman, Cantor Mike Zusman. Mike, I wanted to see if you could give us a quick word. I know that you deal with daily issues of life and death as a chaplain, a medical chaplain. What does it mean to be human in these difficult hours?
Thank you, Reverend Hood. And it's an honor to sit with everybody here in this awful time. And all the people, all the many souls that each of us represents, the communities coming together here. And when I think of connection and humanity, as you articulated, Jeff, in times of dying, in times of terminal illness, we don't know when the exact moment will come in most civilized nations and in the medical settings. Of course, in the situations you've been in, Jeff, the moment is known, and although albeit delayed horrifically with torture, but in those moments, what gives comfort is the connection. As Desmond Tutu said, I am because you are. And that connection lifts us. And I want to say one other thing about the being human element here. And it's something that each person has touched on a little bit, but I've had it a lot in my mind lately. No matter how we gloss over it, at the end of the day, this comes down not to justice, of course, but to revenge and to vengeance, and to what the Judeo-Christian tradition started in the Jewish tradition, borrowing as well from other traditions, articulated as eye for an eye, right? Ayin tachet ayin, which has been so misunderstood to justify the killings. Even in rabbinic tradition, it was used as a symbol to convey financial compensation, and it was meant to cut back on the massacres that would take place. But all that's been lost. Why does it get lost? Why do people forget that the death penalty is not a deterrent? Why do people forget the injustices that are inherent in it? Because we're blinded by vengeance, whether it's direct or whether it's intergenerational, as in my own family from being killed in the Holocaust. There's a bloodlust. We shroud it, we sanitize it, we put it behind glass, like you said, Jeff. But that human element, one of the basest desires of humanity, for vengeance, is why we are all here. And that's what we are here to stand against, as a bulwark against, so that we can finally overcome this great hurdle, which is inhibiting our growth and our development as a species, certainly as a civilization. So when you talk about the human element, it's overcoming that base human issue, which we all deal with, which I've dealt with in my own 180, in my own change of heart on the death penalty. And that's what we're striving to overcome here, without judgment for those who have that in their hearts, as I once did, but with the hope that we can lift each other up to overcome that by recognizing the humanity in the other. Thank you for your time. Think you're muted, Jeff.
Sorry, I had some very important words to say. I apologize. Abe, did you need us?
No, we're just here waiting for a time of death. That I'll be listening to hear what's happened. If you hear of anything, we're watching and just waiting for somebody to come out and tell us. So,
Gotcha. I wanted to. I was going to read a few tweets that I'm sitting here looking at. One is that we're seeing one of the reporters cited who were witnesses for the state. The Attorney General and his chief of staff, the prosecutor, the county sheriff, the Board of Correction vice chairman, Hayden, and Jared Larson from the governor's office. You know, one of the things that I think about in these moments is the fact that the people carrying out these executions are corrections officers from oftentimes small places. This is the best job that's close by type thing. It's not the state's witnesses or the governor or judges or prosecutors or sheriffs that are actually carrying out the penalty. The people who are carrying out the penalty are often, again, lower level corrections officers. My daughter, Madeline, she told me a number of months ago, I was about to go into an execution to be with Anthony Sanchez. And I told her, she said, well, who carries out the execution? And I told her, well, it's, corrections officers. I said, it's employees of the prison. And her response to that was, well, if judges and jurors want to give someone the death penalty, then they should have to carry it out themselves. Madeline's 8 years old. And, those words have stuck with me because it oftentimes has made me think, if judges and jurors had to carry out these death sentences, I'm not sure we would get a lot of death sentences. We have these death sentences because the people who decide that somebody needs to die are not the people that have to carry them out. So we've got these state witnesses who are there, but yet don't have to get their hands dirty. They don't have to carry it out. And one of the things that I feel like you consistently see in state after state is that these governors who decline to offer any sort of help at the end, they never witness these executions. let alone have to carry it out themselves. Why do we exist so far away from each other? Well, the reason is because evil is a lot easier to carry out when you're a long way away from it. It's easy to send bombs overseas to bomb poor people in another country, when they're not in your neighborhood. It's easy not to care about what's happening in urban areas when you live on the other side of town. Again, this is another one of those human moments. It's hard to kill people that you actually have a connection to. It's hard to execute somebody when you have to look into their eyes and see the terror of someone who's about to be executed by the state. And so I wonder, maybe one of the things that we need to advocate for is go ahead and start making a requirement. Juries that vote for death sentences should have to carry out the sentence, or at the very least have to watch it. But again, we're in a situation where people give a death sentence and then 30 years later, they pop up and say, well, I didn't know it was going to actually happen. I don't want this to happen now. And it gets on their conscience. Seems to me that with these jurors, we need to make sure that it gets on people's consciences long before it's actually carried out. And maybe the way to do that is to say, you got to be there. Maybe not. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that there is such a huge disconnect between a jury and an actual death sentence being carried out. And somehow in our work, we got to close the gap. Charles, I wanted to jump back to you really quick. I mean, with all of your work on all of these cases, how many jurors do you think would vote for a death sentence if they knew they not had to carry it out, but even had to watch it?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I think the jury is one of the biggest problems with the death penalty. They tell you this is a jury of your peers. Well, my peers, not all my peers are for the death penalty. So how can that be a jury of my peers? So when you set a jury, everybody there is for the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. So how is that my peers? There's no way you're going to tell me all my peers are for the death penalty. So you're already set up. So I agree with you. If you are for the death penalty and you put yourself on that jury or allow yourself to be on that jury and you're, again, for the death penalty and you voted for the death penalty, yes, you should be there to see it. I want to see how you get that out of your mind, because the jury is the only thing in the criminal justice system that you can connect and use it to do your dirt and then disconnect and never hear from that particular jury anymore, because it's always going to be a new jury. Even if you get a new trial, it's not going to be that same jury. It's going to be a different one. So that's the only thing that I've seen. You can't disconnect the prosecutor, the judge, or anything else in the criminal justice system, but you can connect and disconnect the jury. So I agree with you. The jury is so far disconnected, like, hey, we did our duty. But I think those jurors, if anybody's still left after 20, 30, 40 years, because most of them are elderly or older people, so they're not even around after 30 years, because most of the guys that go on death row, 18 to 21. So there's a whole generation wiped out of jurors. So here comes some other people who feels no guilt because they says, I wasn't on the jury. Yeah, the jury basically died. But yeah, I think anybody living or a relative, yes, I think you should witness that. I think the governor, being the head of the state, he is most definitely the one that has to be there. There's no way he should be or she should get out of that. You are the leader. You should see each and every one of them carried out. How about we drive you crazy, like you did Charles Keith, like you did Roderick Reed, Antoinette Jones? How about we drive you crazy? How about you watch so many executions and see how many faces fly through your head? You try to lay down at night and you're going to flip through pages of faces and deaths and all that stuff. How about we ruin your life? Because all you're doing is giving a command, boom, and then you go on somewhere to eat steak, play golf, or whatever you're going to do. You disconnect. But as our leader, we're asking you to watch each and every one of them to make sure they go right. First-hand information. Set a particular seat there and it should say governor. I don't care if it's a throne, governor, and make him watch. Yeah, that jury is the biggest problem with wrongful conviction, because everybody gets up when that jury wants to play lawyer. That's the time everybody loves the prosecutor. Come on, how can you be a jury of my peers when you love what they're doing to me? When you are the same poor person that could, or your relative, could be sitting in that same guilty chair. See, we're putting jurors out there that are not educated to the law at all. Half the terminology. My brother says, I sat through a death penalty case, Chuck. He says, half the terminology, I didn't even know what them people was talking about. So I know the jury didn't know. So you're getting lost on language already. And then you're going to decide on somebody's life when you don't even know what the hell that lawyer's even talking about. He had to go to school to learn that terminology. Where did you learn it? So it's all a farce to get done what the prosecutor needs to do. So he says, well, we're going to get you a jury of your peers. How? They're as dumb as I am. I'm sitting in this chair knowing nothing about the death penalty or the words and jargon that you're using. And I know the jury don't either. Half of them up there on medication. You see them nod. I saw them nodding off to sleep, you know, all kinds of distractions. And here you are fighting for your life. And then we get to the appellate system. They got all this information showing people what they call mitigating factors. What does those mitigating factors mean if you don't want to hear them? What does it mean to fight for a guy's innocence if they don't want to hear it? They don't want to hear my brother's case. That's why I can't prove his innocence. They don't want to hear it. If they would hear it, my brother would be home. But it's always denied, as it is with, here we're looking at Ivan Cantu. We're looking at all these cases. As the people, as you're representing us, the people, your job of what we're paying you is to hear these cases. You can't be up here sitting in those seats and people are fighting for their lives.
Charles, I gotta let the dog out to go to the bathroom. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Keep it rolling.
All right. But that's the thing, you know, you can't allow poor people to make decisions on poor people. You don't run into rich jurors. At least I haven't seen too many. You know, it's always the community. And then those people got to go right back into the community. And now they want to ask questions. Do you think I got it right? There were so many things I was thinking about. You know, that's the time you were supposed to get up there when we're talking about a person's life. The moment you feel doubt, it's like, no, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can take this person's life, because the word in our criminal justice system is doubt. And I think they've thrown that word away. Now it's, I'm going to convict you and you figure your way out. See, that's the confusion. Figure your way out when there's so much doubt. And again, an appeals process is afforded to you through our criminal justice system, through our legal system, but yet it's always denied. And the funny thing what attorneys tell me is, once that information is denied, you can't bring it up again. You got to find something else. How many different things are you going to find to bring up to the criminal justice system when they keep denying it? Me and my brother are going on 32 years. 32 years, half my life of saying that my brother was innocent. I said it in 94. I said it in 2004. I'm saying it now, and I can prove it. But they deny me that opportunity. They deny the attorneys. You know, you burn attorneys out. You really burn them out of putting up. You have to keep putting up these motions after motions after motions. Look how many motions have been filed in the Rodney Reed case. It took poor Julius Jones to go down to 2 hours of his life. Come on. Your people are showing you that they care. The people are showing you. See, we're the people and you're supposed to represent us. I don't understand it. It's like a devalue of life. You know, if you're underneath this line, then eligible. That's what got me. You're eligible for the death penalty, which means they don't even have to seek it. You have to be found eligible. Isn't that awful? Hey, he's eligible, but this guy's not. Depending on what county, as Abe has always told me, depending on what county, this guy killed 7 people, but he can't be given the death penalty. This guy over here in this county killed 2 people. They automatically go for the capital punishment and take his life and give him the death penalty. How can you kill the guy that killed 2 people and not kill the guy that killed 7? So where's your fairness? And if we as people can't see this, we're blind. And then we allow our leaders to bully us when we're the ones that voted them in. We voted them in and then we get bullied. Anything we don't agree with, they don't change their mind. It's like once they get in that seat, they go crazy. They literally go crazy. And it doesn't seem like they're for us. Sometimes this is where our worst fear and nightmares come in, depending who comes in office. So are we electing killers? We have to think about that. Are we really electing killers? Hard-hearted people don't have a heart that go to church on Sunday. Yeah. You can go ahead, Jeff. I'm done.
Thank you, Charles.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to I didn't mean to have to jump off, but I was afraid I was going to have to clean up a mess.
That's right. Well, you got to realize that's what we're sitting here doing now. You know, this is the death penalty is a mess. And I always tell people about you going in these guys, spiritual advisors, holding guys' hands and stuff like that. And we're laughing, we're saying, because we're the type of guy. We are the people that you're most likely to hold our hand, because we're the ones that's going to be found guilty. We're the ones that's going to be in that criminal justice system, because we're the poor. We're those minorities. And it's like, man, there's a guy out there doing that. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have, even though you're being done wrong, you don't have to die by yourself. And I tell him his name is Jeff Hood. So there's a lot of people looking you up. I mean, that's a hell of a thing to do. And that's what the governor should be doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Charles. You are a good friend and an even better person. But so
hey, we know you in the hood.
All right, so the Catholic Mobilizing Network, I just saw that this prayer, that they do an online vigil while we're gathering, and I just saw that they posted this prayer. Merciful God, we know that Idaho will likely execute Thomas Creech soon. Be with him in his final moments. Where he feels fear, let him know comfort. Where he feels despair, let him know hope. Where he feels hatred, let him know love. Beautiful words. As we're still waiting on a time of death, I wanted to, or confirmation of death even, I wanted to open up the chat to questions that people might have about what's happening right now, what's going on with the death penalty, questions for Charles, for me, perhaps for Abe, anything that you can think of that might be appropriate to discuss right now. I wanted to go ahead and open that up. And as we wait on all of those to flow in, I wanted to also, I saw something interesting. Carrie Rawson, who is a very fascinating person, I saw that she was on Twitter, and Carrie Rawson, her father is the BTK killer, and she found out that her dad was a serial killer, and she's written a book about her experiences. But she posted this morning, well, about 12 minutes ago. She says, gonna likely to step in it, but there is a convicted multi-murderer named Thomas Creech being executed today in Idaho. Before my own father was arrested for serial murder, I didn't give the death penalty much thought, or was even for it. Since Dad's arrest, I've been torn up over it. again, BTK killer. I mean, one of the, you know, most infamous serial killers going. I shouldn't say going. He's not going anymore, but you know, one of the more infamous murderers in recent years. And here is his daughter struggling with what she's, you know, what she's experiencing. And it's that question of, you know, when you get close to these guys, you know, if they're your dad, if they're your brother, it's difficult. You know, I got, you know, the tabloids in the UK are infamous. And after Kenny's execution, there was a headline that said something to the degree of crazy minister sobs over convicted murderer. And, and, you know, really set it up like, here's this loony pastor that actually cares about this guy who was just suffocated to death. And, you know, it just shows us, Charles, how far the gap is of our humanity. Like, as if it's funny or amusing for somebody to cry when they see someone executed. I mean, it feels just insane. I mean, it just feels like you would have to have your heart just seared to not see how that could be an emotional moment. But okay, Charles, got Karen Hernandez here. Based on what Charles was just saying, do we have data about governors, judges, or other officials who change their stance on the death penalty after witnessing an execution, interacting with families? I'll jump in really quick, Charles, and if you got anything to say.
Yeah.
We've got, hold on one second. We've got a number of people who have, Ron McAndrew is the first one that comes to mind, who was the warden during the last, I believe it was last two electric chair executions in Florida. And he was actually presiding over an execution when the person, I'm having difficulty recalling the guy's name, but the condemned man that they were executing, he caught on fire. And he said that that was the most horrific thing that he ever imagined. He said he got out of there and he couldn't get the smell off of it no matter how many showers he took. He said that he closes his eyes at night and he feels haunted. And I can tell you that for me, I'll tell a couple of brief stories, but when Scott Eisenberg was executed back in January, one of the ways that I described it was I saw the colors of the rainbow go through his face, meaning he goes from white to yellow to red to blue to green and then white again. And just, you know, you can see every stage of death happening almost instantaneously right in front of you. The other thing that comes to mind is Arthur Brown last March when he was executed. He told me that he wanted to thank me before he was executed. He said, "I don't know how to thank you." And I said, "Man, you don't have to thank me or anything like that." I said, "That's ridiculous." And he said, No, I want to thank you." And I said, "Okay." He said, watch me on the gurney. I'm going to shake my leg to thank you." So in the midst of his execution, this guy is having humanity and compassion for me, shaking his leg. And I guess I just think that the reason I tell these stories is because I do believe that the closer we can get people to the execution chamber, the more likely they will be to reconsider their positions. Because again, it speaks to that humanity. I'll also lastly say that there are certainly corrections officers all over the country who have responded and said, you know, they don't want to do this anymore. In Ohio, what is it, Charles? The last 3 wardens that have presided over executions has come out and said they're against the death penalty. They want the death penalty abolished in Ohio. Charles,
Exactly.
before you jump in, I wanted to read a few of these comments really quick. Let's see. Kathy says, to this day, I can remember having to write a paper in high school on argumentative topics, and one was the death penalty. It'd be interesting to do a survey of these young people who are our future. Certainly. Jasmine, my father was murdered by his second wife, but it never occurred to me to want to see anyone die for it or you die for it. I thought of her children and knew from my own experience the pain that they would have to endure. Wow, it's beautiful, Jasmine. Difficult, but a beautiful expression of love and humanity. Kathy, of course, says Jasmine has a humble heart. Sabrina says, I'm sorry about your father. Andrea is saying, I know that there's been other governors who've changed their mind. Jesse Tefero. Let's see. Jim and Nancy Petro. Jim Petro changed his stance about the death penalty and have been very vocal in opposing it. They wrote a book called False Justice, 8 Myths That Convict the Innocent. It's, again, the closer we get people to the execution chamber, the more that we will begin to see change. Charles, what are you thinking?
Well, I got the opportunity to talk to Governor Strickland personally. You know, he's the guy that commuted my brother's sentence to life without parole back in 2010. And, you know, after that, you know, talking to him, you never really think about a guy being innocent or guilty. You know, you're trying to do your duty as a governor. If I'm not mistaken, he executed 28, 29 people. And, you know, from my knowledge, he says that's the worst thing that happened during his governorship. You know, he wish he hadn't executed anyone. As you'll see with Governor Mike DeWine, he's done 2 terms without executing anyone. You know, so he doesn't have that stain of blood on his hand or signing somebody's life away. But Governor Strickland told me one of the worst decisions that he feel that he's made was not commuting my brother's sentence to pardon to send him home. It trapped him. You know, he thought that he was going to win the next election, which he lost. He was going to handle it at that point, but he lost that election and it left my brother stranded, you know, with life without parole. So right now we have a pardon sitting on Governor DeWine's desk, you know, and we're hoping that any day, any times, maybe sometime this year, that he can find it in his heart to give my brother that pardon so he can come home and we can move forward with our lives. But yeah, Governor Strickland, my hat's off to him for saving my brother. You know, he said there was too many problems in the case. He wanted to go back and view it. He lost the election. I'm assuming that the next governor was going to pick it up, but he didn't. So I'm like, wow, what happened? So, you know, those interactions with the governors and, you know, you seeing some of them change their stances. You know, you see the commutations that some of them have them. So you are seeing some compassion out there. I mean, we're getting through to somebody, but yeah, that's my biggest take was Governor Strickland and sparing my brother and how that has affected him and how he's come out to my aid and my brother's aid in some of the things that he's saying and doing now. So he's almost like an advocate governor now.
Yeah, it's just difficult to, you know, it's slow. We want it to be fast, but it's slow.
Exactly.
And we want it to be fast enough to save Tom Creech. We want it to be fast enough to save Ivan Cantu, but it's slow.
Yeah.
And again, I wish it could be a lot faster.
Yo,
I saw Jessica. I saw your question. Jessica is one of my friends on Facebook that I do not know, but I see her from time to time. Let's see. She's asking about nitrogen hypoxia and can it be stopped as cruel and unusual punishment? The only thing that I can speak to as far as as far as nitrogen hypoxia goes, it has been my hope that people would hear from me and others just how horrible it really was, and that give people the understanding that this was cruel and unusual. I don't know what that means from here going forward. I don't know what that means in terms of the courts, the way they respond. I am quite fearful that we are going to see an influx of executions in the coming days. And I didn't think we would see this execution in Idaho. I felt like there be something that would stop it, but there hasn't been. And here we are. I am getting word from Idaho that a final stay of execution has been denied by the Supreme Court. I was under the impression that there were nothing else pending before the Supreme Court, but local news in Idaho is saying that Thomas Creech was just denied. If that's the case, then we could be sometime even before the execution is carried out. Abe, can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, what are you hearing?
So, local news in Boise is reporting that Thomas Creech's last stay was just denied by the Supreme Court, and therefore the execution hasn't happened yet, and is in process.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if that's I don't know what that means, but it does seem that if they're reporting that, then the execution hasn't happened yet.
Well, that's pretty outrageous that they had reported previously that all these stays were denied. So if that's happening, then it's prayer time again.
Yeah, we'll stick with it, and we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we're here. Most of the people, it's very, very cold and windy here. Most of the people have taken off. So I'm going to see if we don't just sit in the car here instead and wait for word. So put a couple.
All right, thank you. Andrea, as far as the nitrogen execution goes, you're correct. I mean, it was absolutely horrific, and number of people who were there were very scarred by it. No doubt about that. And I think that one of the more powerful things has been that repeatedly we have seen reporters and other people who were there be utterly just horrified by what they saw. The Catholic Mobilizing Network has said that it has been 45 minutes since the scheduled time, longer than that now, about 58 minutes since the scheduled time of Thomas's execution, with no word about what has happened. We don't know what this means. Sometimes this means that there has been judicial proceedings that have delayed the execution. Other times this means that there is a botched execution underway, and they're having difficulty performing the execution. Charles, this seems to be a whole nother round of craziness. Is the fact that we've got these states that can't kill people. They can't figure out how to run an IV line. I mean, it's absurd.
That shows you that we're not supposed to have it. It's showing you that it's unnatural. See, for a man to die to death at the hands of another man, it's unnatural, and that's why we call those that killed man killers. And these guys are killers too. They just haven't gotten their technique down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even with the gas mask, you know, it kind of threw me when I did a little research on it. And the gas mask was invented by two black men. I believe it was in World War I, World War II, to keep them away from the gas, so the gases and things wouldn't kill them. This was not supposed to be an instrument of death. This was supposed to be an instrument to save lives. So imagine a black person killing something that's going to mass wipe out the poor and other black people. I mean, that really took me back. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? How can you take something that a black person made to save lives, and then you're going to turn around and use it to take lives? That threw me right there. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy. You know, we just are getting word from Montana that Thomas Creech's final writ has been denied by the Supreme Court, and the execution is going forward. Again, very sort of strange. I mean, you know, we're an hour now past the scheduled execution time. This usually happens in Alabama. They're the ones that usually screw up these executions. But when a state hasn't executed anybody in a while, you can expect there to be difficulties, especially when you don't know what you're doing. And unfortunately, the only way for people to know what they're doing is by practice. And I don't know how many people want to volunteer for that practice, but anyways,
Jeff,
go ahead, Janet.
So I'm linking up with Ember, who keep Death Row Watcher, who keeps an eye on things, and he's just saying that he thinks it's a little alarming that his Thomas Creech's execution hasn't been announced as over yet, considering the execution process began at 10 at Mountain Standard Time. And he also goes on to say he was pretty sure that prior to the execution, all the stay applications had been denied.
Yeah, it's a very strange moment. Let's see. Yeah, we don't. I mean, it's important to say that when these moments happen, I mean, we're not intending to be alarmist. I mean, we're not. You know, obviously, the last thing we would want is for somebody to have to suffer and experience any sort of a botched execution. But it is disturbing that the state says we're going to execute somebody an hour ago, and we're still waiting. I mean, we've already heard the prayers, we've already had the vigil, everybody's packed up and, you know, headed back to the house, and, you know, had no idea that you know, Thomas was still alive. I have a belief that prayer can be felt. And so I would want all these people out there, you know, if I was in Tom's position, I would want all those people out there still praying for me. But with their secrecy,
they're praying.
Fair enough.
They were freezing their butts off. It's cold.
Fair enough. But you know, with the indecision, the inability, the secrecy, all of these issues further dehumanize someone, and they dehumanize all of us because we don't know what's going on. Mike, are you able to talk?
Yes, I want to just say a couple things. I was very struck by what Charles said about the gas mask, and it reminds me of the fact that what we're witnessing today, lethal injection, it actually was first envisioned by a Jewish man in the late 19th century, a doctor, thought of the idea as a better and more less cruel manner of killing than hanging. But it was the Nazis who first implemented it. They're the ones who turned it against, you might say, against the Jews and against those who were deemed unworthy of life. And that's where the legacy of what we're witnessing right now comes from. But it's very similar to what Charles said, and how this is linked both to that Nazi legacy and the racist and the legacy of lynching that we see into this horrific monstrosity. The thing that I wanted to add in this awful moment, which itself is torturous, is my fear is that whether it's nitrogen hypoxia or lethal injection or whatever it may be, that at the end of the day, any justifications can and will be made so that it doesn't matter how cruel, how torturous, and how unusual the punishment is. Because when it comes to that desire for revenge, that's the point. And we can try to hide it, we can try to sanitize it in every way, but at the end of the day, if you get people who are still, if the ethos is to say, how can this minister, Reverend Hood, be crying over this sadistic monster killer who deserves the worst of the worst, then nothing would be cruel enough to quench that thirst for vengeance. And so that's in my mind what we need to come at and overcome. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but these are the thoughts in my mind as we're dealing with all this, because the laws are on the books, but we can just, those are just words, right? The government's only as good as the people who make it up.
Right.
So,
of course,
those are my thoughts.
Of course. Well, thank you, Mike. I'm gonna say something intense. It won't be the first time, but I've interacted with people on death row over the years. I mean, I've been doing this, spiritual advising, close proximity type work for a long time now. And I was speaking to a journalist the other day, and they were very shocked when I said this. But I said, I've met guys that I could see myself wanting to kill with my own bare hands. I mean, people who I will never forget a visit I had with a gentleman in Texas who was a serial killer of children. And he asked if I could send him a picture of my kids. And that's someone that I stepped away and said, this person deserves to be executed. That's the first thought that I had. And then I had to go back and say, wait a second. You have to mind your own heart, and you have to look. I mean, we're not perfect. I mean, there's, I would think that Mike, with regards to your kid, Charles, your family, your initial thought, of course, would be, I want this person to pay, and I want them to pay severely. Abolition is not about the initial reaction. It's about the long-term lifestyle. Because I think so often when people make these sorts of questions of, well, if somebody came in your house and they were about to shoot you, and all of these types of scenarios, one of the things that I always like to say is that I don't believe in situational ethics. I could come up with any sort of situation that would, I could convince you to do all sorts of things, or, get you to a place where you would say you would do all sorts of things. You see, what I believe in is a deeper ethic, an ethic that's about lifestyle. I mean, Dr. King talked about this all the time. He said, I'm a student and dedicated and a teacher of nonviolence. But when somebody punches you in the face, you don't feel nonviolent in that moment. And so, a lot of times my prayer for my own life is, God, help me to be loving. Help me to be graceful. Help me to have love for my enemies, because that doesn't come natural. You can't just manifest that often it takes
Janet's got her hand up.
that extra spirit, that extra love. Janet, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, Jeff. I just spoke with a guy from the media. He thinks it's done. He's waiting to hear. Janet, did you hear anything?
Right. So it was just another message I had from Ember, who was reporting that the Idaho Department of Corrections had said that the witnesses were briefed and were escorted into their respective viewing rooms at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And he goes on to say, unless they're outright lying, they mentioned the execution process should have started momentarily after that hour, after the top of the hour.
I mean, that means they're having trouble with it. I mean, that's the only thing it could mean if they started at 10. I mean, would it take you an hour and 15 minutes if you wanted to kill somebody? I mean, it just shows the absurdity of all of this.
It's a circus. Circus in town, and you know, they're all just trying to figure it out because they haven't done it in a dozen years. Or
yeah, I mean, and I think that it's, you know, Mike and Charles, some of the things that y'all said were very poignant to me. This idea that that someone who was Jewish came up with this lethal injection, this idea that someone who was a person of color came up with this gas mask, nitrogen hypoxia stuff. You know, we got every religion, every race, every person that's come up with evil stuff. And they always say, I got a more humane way to do this. It's important to remember there is no humane way to kill someone.
Hey, I mean, Dr. Hood.
Yep.
We're viewing people that's more into practicing evil than we are seeing people to practice kindness and love. We can know what kindness and love is, but that doesn't mean you're out there practicing it. We can know the answer is love and compassion.
Hold on, stop. Let me come in. Charles, I gotta interrupt you. Yeah. Thomas Creech's execution was stopped at 10:58 because prison officials were unable to establish an IV line and the death warrant has expired.
Wow.
So Thomas Creech is still alive. And Abe, did you hear that?
They botched it.
Hey. Oh my gosh.
All right, say that again.
Thomas Creech is still alive. It's botched. They were unable to insert an IV line and the death warrant has expired.
Huh. Can you believe that, Shane? Okay. Well, I hope that he didn't suffer too much and now he gets to go. This is crazy. Well, we're going to find out some more information very soon about this. And amen. Thank you to everybody that's sticking around. Hey, Jan, did you catch that? That's just insane. So, well, and it just goes to show, and we knew this probably could be action to needles, but yet again, this is like what, the third time, 2002, you guys have sent back. Ohio's Dark Times, now Idaho. It's wasted all of this time and money and energy. Incredible. I'm going to go and chit chat with some of these reporters.
All right, Abe, 1 second. Okay, Janet, what was you about to say? And Janet, you're on mute.
Oh, yeah. Ember's confirming what you've heard, and also that there is a media briefing scheduled in 17 minutes.
Okay.
And he sent me that message 2 minutes ago.
Mary Beth, just to answer your question, a judge would have to reissue a death warrant, and that's not going to happen today. So this means he will not be executed.
That's incredible.
So let me give you a little.
Well, let me just say, the federal government, they expired, and they said, you got a new warrant, it's right now, get on the table. So they did that a couple of times. So let's not be sure exactly what's going to happen. What we do know is that we continue to stand in opposition to this absurdity, and we're going to keep it going. I'll be checking back as soon as I find out a little bit more information. We might just have to, if you guys feel the need to shut it down. But I'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay.
Let me just say
Mike.
one thing to preparation, a primer for this press conference. Whatever they're going to say, what this whole thing today was an exercise in cruelty and in revenge and in punishment and horror. That's what we witnessed today. No matter what happens, no matter what they're going to say, that's what this is about. An exercise in torture and revenge. And it's sickening. And I'm grateful for death penalty action, that we can be here as a testament for future generations. Because our children will know that we stood here in the face of this, horror. And therein lay the hope for humanity. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Janet.
Remember to unmute this time. Amber has just sent another message saying that he's received confirmation and the execution was called off at 10:58 Mountain Standard Time, or whatever that is.
Man,
so after 58 minutes.
Janet, I want you to send a message to Amber and let them know that Jeff was about 5 minutes earlier on the call. So I need to be the death row watcher. I'm just playing. Sorry, I'm just playing. Okay. So, all right. So we're in this sort of wild moment. I wanted to wait just a second, let Abe come back. But first of all, Kenny Smith, of course, they attempted to execute him before the nitrogen execution. So I got to hear a lot about what that was like. And Kenny compared it to being up under a sewing machine. And he said he was just stuck over and over and over again. So it's important to know that Thomas Creech has been through hell. And no doubt about that. And so I think we need to remember to pray for not just be excited, but to pray for his well-being, because he just went through an incredibly traumatic experience. I think the other thing that we need to remember is so there's the physical part, but there's also the mental part. I mean, here's this person prepared to die, and now all of a sudden they're going back to their cell. I mean, what do you think that's going to be like? I mean, just going back to the cell. The other thing
imagine.
The other thing that happens during these moments is, Charles, I'm sure you've dealt with this, but they've already packed up all of his stuff.
And all the guys have said their goodbyes.
Yeah, all the guys have said goodbye. Any sort of extra amenities that he had are in somebody else's cell now. And so it's not just that they are, they take, I guess what I'm trying to say is all of their comfort that they would have had is no longer there. I think it's important to also say that we're talking about a situation where you had the Attorney General of Idaho sitting there waiting for this thing to happen. You've got the chief law enforcement officer in the state of Idaho, and they couldn't make it happen. These folks are imbeciles, and they shouldn't have been trying to carry out an execution in the first place. Janet.
Yeah, so just another message from Ember that says prison officials are going to let the warrant expire, the Idaho Department of Corrections says, and Creech is not going to be executed today.
That's wonderful. Sabrina asked, how long was he strapped down? They would have strapped him down at 10 o'clock, and it says that they got him up at 10:58, so we're probably talking about 58 minutes. Let me rephrase that. That something just went through my mind. They strapped him down probably 10 to 15 minutes prior. So you're talking about an hour to 10, an hour to 15 minutes strapped on that gurney. With Kenny's execution, they actually inverted him. So he was, upside down like this, trying to get all the blood to rush to his hands and veins up here so that they could get the vein to pop up. It's absolutely a horrific thing that they tried to do this morning. And yeah, like I said, the Attorney General of Idaho is sitting there as all of this is going on. I mean, can you imagine if the jury had been forced to sit there and watch him poke him over and over and over again, with him screaming and him talking about how much they're hurting him? I mean, it's Jennifer says, I think that there would be a good legal argument to stop the execution entirely, or to stop the execution entirely. Unfortunately, Jennifer, what we have seen is that after these botched executions, they are even more zealous to kill them, because what they do in Kenny's case, Kenny had a lawsuit going against the state of Alabama, and it was for, I guess, unreasonable intentional infliction of emotional distress, these types of civil arguments. And one of his arguments to keep from being executed was that the state of Alabama was circumventing that lawsuit and their liability in that lawsuit by killing him. And the judge's response was, I'm sure that's what they're doing, but they can't. And so it's not just that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a benefit to the state to execute this person as fast as they can, because the quicker they execute them, the quicker they don't have to deal with any legal liabilities for what they've done. It's like I said, it's absolutely horrific. Charles, what do you think? Do you think we need to keep waiting, or do we want to shut it down?
We might as well go ahead and shut it down. If we stay on, it's like the anticipation of the execution to continue. So they shut it down, we're gonna shut it down.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We're gonna shut it down on our own terms. Okay.
That's right. Save that energy for the next.
Yeah, we're gonna be together tonight. The vigil for Cantu begins at 5 o'clock, I think. Is it 5 o'clock Central Time?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to thank everybody who has joined us. Thank you for sticking with us. And let's go ahead and close this out with a quick prayer for Thomas. Spirit of love, spirit of life, spirit of hope, spirit of grace, spirit of justice. Fill Tom Creech up right now. Fill him up. Let him know love, grace, mercy, justice, compassion. And let him know those things viscerally. God, I pray that this will be the last attempt on the life of Tom Creech. I pray that we will see him die as an old man. And we pray these things not because of who Tom Creech is. We pray these things because of who you are, God, and who you have created us to be. We believe that Tom Creech can be so much more than what we have been told he is. We pray that he will have such an opportunity. And God, help us to end the death penalty where we never have to have one of these vigils again. Amen. All right, y'all. Thank you. Hey, Abe, I think we're going to close it up.
All right. Well, you have my blessing.
Okay.
And I guess we get
That's
more
what
work
I was looking
here in
for.
Idaho. Unbelievable. But, you know, this is why death penalty action is out here to, you know, shine a spotlight on this. I'm grateful for everybody that has been present with us today, and it has held down the fort once again as we watch this. Janice, you had something?
Yeah, there was just someone on the Q&A who wanted the link for the Zoom tonight, but it seems to have the question seems to have gone, or has it been answered? All right, it looks like Mike's answered.
I answered it. Yeah.
Thank you. As far as we know, is there any news on Ivan Cantu?
No.
Okay, well, you know, we'll be back an hour, so like 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Maybe we'll get on a little bit early and talk about what the situation is in Idaho. But it's Death Penalty Action signing out. We'll see you all again in a little while.
Thank you, Abe. Thank you, everybody. Janet, did you have one more thing?
So I've just had another message from Ember. I think it might be the media report. It says at approximately 11 a.m., Director Tuolt, after consulting with the medical team leader, determined that the medical team could not establish an IV line, rendering the execution unable to proceed. Mr. Creech will be returned to his cell and witnesses will be escorted out of the facility. As a result, the death warrant will expire. The state will consider next steps. Director DeWalt and state witnesses to include the media, will be arriving in the media center shortly for a brief press conference.
All right. We'll see y'all this evening.
Oh gosh, there's someone else wanting.